sit. This is Kara, and this is Kara's roadmap to success. Kara is a great little dog. Sit. That's passive training. We're not quite ready for that. Kara's a great little dog. She just has some reactivity issues in terms of, I think she thinks she's protecting the property, running at the fence. I think also there's some dogs that come by and she wants to kind of show off fun. When she's running up and down and she's not barking, or maybe a little low chortle, that could be just her showing off at the dog that's walking by. If she's barking and running back and forth and it sounds more guttural, that might be more territorial. So being a 4-year-old, she's got a lot of beans. So the first thing we talked about was exercise. I went over some creative ways of exercising, so I'm going to cover just the summaries of them. Kara, sit, sit. So we talked about the doggy stairmaster. So that's going to the top of the stairs. Make sure you do that with an empty stomach, and also check with your vet. I am a head doctor, not a body doctor. I want to make sure none of the things that we're going over are going to be detrimental to your dog's health. So the dog starts limping or doing things after any of these activities, we want to make sure we stop, check with your vet to make sure that the vet is cool with us doing it. So the doggy stairmaster, we want to do all this exercise with an empty stomach. Remember, dogs' stomachs can flip and it can actually kill them. So the dogs should not exercise until about 45 minutes. Come. Passive training, we'll talk about it in a minute, I promise. A dog should have at least 90 minutes after they exercise, after they eat, before they exercise, give the food the chance to vacate the stomach. Okay, so for the doggy stairmaster, I show Kara I have a treat. When she's looking at me, I throw the treat to the bottom of the stairs. Kara runs down the stairs and looks up, and I say, like, Cabo, Jamaica, a fun word that needs to go to the bottom of the steps. Then I show her that I have another treat. She comes to the top of the stairs, give her another treat, and they call this one North Pole or Santa's Place or something like that. We have kids in the house, like using fun command words. Remember, dogs are the only animal on the planet that can read a human facial expression. And so if you come up with these funny command words, happy hour means drink water, chill means to lay down. You have the cool dog. And so kids that like dogs are less likely to tease them. Yeah, we have a couple of young kids in the house. And so if we have fun command words, that can really be beneficial in terms of motivating the dog and creating a light behavior or light energy. So one of the things you might want to do is when you come up with new command words, come up with, ask both of the kids to come up with words and then tell you at dinner. And then mom and dad make the vote to make sure the final decision is not something weird, like Bodie McBoatface. If the kids are involved in kind of coming up with some of the command words, that can be very beneficial. Just make sure it's somewhat relative. Don't say like lasagna to means lay down. Chill, and the dog lays down. You can kind of see that. So try to use slang words or words that are going to make you or your friends or your kids' friends chuckle and laugh. Okay, so the doggy stairmaster. First time I do this, I do it with an empty stomach. I keep on throwing those treats up and down when the dog is hungry until Carl's like, "You're crazy. I've been down there 88 times. I'm not coming down there anymore." Now we know what that maximum number is. It's important to know that maximum number because we don't want to exercise her to the extent of her range, because just like us, if we exercise to all we've got, we're going to be not good to go out. But if we exercise 50% of that, then we can get some nice exercise and then still be productive. So the idea is to play around with the number of repetitions until you find the right amount. And there might be right amounts for different activities. Maybe before we practice the recalls away from the fence, maybe she needs 25 up downs on the stairs. If it's after school and there's a whole bunch of kids walking by, maybe we have to practice 50 up downs on the stairs. So you might have different amounts for different activities. So that's the doggy stairmaster. 50 to 75% of that maximum number is what we want to do. All right, so other forms of exercise, you can also, on a walk, letting her sniff. Dogs burn more energy by sniffing on a walk than they do from actually walking. You can get a doggy backpack. Doggy backpack should be probably about 50 to 80 bucks for her. Don't get one that's too cheap or too expensive. You get too cheap, it falls apart. Too expensive, it's just more than you need. So the idea is to put bottles of water or sand or something in there. The dog is now carrying something, that's a job, so that makes them less likely to be reactive. It also makes their walk more efficient because they're carrying weight. And so it's beneficial in a couple different ways. I'd also like you guys to Google scent games, S-C-E-N-T. It's just hiding 5 treats around the living room or around the leg of a stool or whatever it is. The dog's got to find them. Every time she looks it up, you say hunt, search, find, or whatever it is. Now it becomes a game. The Guardians already do this a little bit with the kids, and it's a great way for the dog to use its nose. Dog's nose controls about 60% of their brain, and dogs can't, if the dog is using their nose, it's very stimulating as well as draining of energy. So it's a nice way, the scent games can be a nice way to drain some energy. You can also, of course, play fetch. Remember, when you play fetch, as I throw the object, I say fetch. When the dog picks the object up, I say fetch. And then I hold the treat out. When the dog put the treat in the dog's mouth, then I say fetch a third time. After a while, then you can say fetch. The dog knows what you mean. Let me see, what else can we do? We can also feed our dogs, have treat dispensing toys, like a snuffle mat or an Omega Paw treat ball. That's the orange ball that I showed you in the video. The snuffle mat, the first one you'll see on Amazon, is about $35, is that gray one. That's the one that I recommend, and I showed you the video of. If you feed her out of that twice a day, that's like making 2 meals almost like walks. So if we can incorporate the Doggy Stairmaster, some scent games, a game of fetch, using the Omega Paw treat ball and a snuffle mat and a walk, now we just added in, like, 80% more exercise in smaller bunches. Remember, exercise is best done in small, more intense versions multiple times a day than one long walk in the middle of the day or at the end of the day. Also use exercise to set her up for success. Exercise before the walk, exercise before you're going to do some training, exercise before guests come over, or you're going to practice the outdoor stuff in the video above. Okay, so that's exercise, and look for other ways of exercising. There's a lot of other stuff you can do that's fun and it's beneficial. We also talked about the importance of rules. Now, a couple of housekeeping things. Dogs learn through association, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct or reward a dog for them to have the ability to make that connection, but it has to be repeated over and over enough times consistently before the light bulb comes on over their head. Also, dogs learn by probing. They're probing, expecting us to say no, or that's the boundary of the limit. Lack of rules means that we're not very consistent on doing that, and lack of consistency is one of the things that confuses and frustrates dogs the most. So let me see, remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing. At one point, one of the children had some cheese, and she was sitting there, and the dog came up and got within 7 feet of the child, which is a way of challenging, and the guardian would reach over and was scratching her butt. That didn't look like the dog was challenging, it was just its presence was there, but the presence is inappropriate. Remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing. Now, this also applies to unbalanced states of mind. So if you pet a fearful dog, you'll make them more fearful. Excited is probably the most common. But a barky dog, a lungy dog, all the rest of that stuff. You can lay your hand on the dog, and that laying of hands is associated with affection, but as soon as you start petting, you'll make it worse. It's probably one of the most common mistakes people make with dogs. Okay, now on the flip side of that, anything your dog is doing when you pet it, in your presence, if you don't disagree with it, not disagreeing is the same thing as saying that is my seal of approval. So to dogs, in a very real way, not saying no is similar to saying yes. Now, we combine all that stuff together. Dogs go through life probing, waiting for you to say that's the limit. Then I'm going to circle back around and try again and again. And if you are consistent, after a while I learned that's the line. I'm not allowed to go in the kitchen. And also during different variations, like we talked about going around the carpet, but also going in the kitchen. I can go in the kitchen when the humans are there, as long as they're not cooking. I can go in the kitchen when no one's humans are there. I can go in the kitchen when the kids are there. I can go in the kitchen if Ball goes there. When the humans are cooking, they're not going to allow me to go in there. Now, if you want to learn how to practice, I'm watching myself on the camera, so I get to see her zooming behind me. If you want to practice keeping out of the kitchen, or need help on practicing that technique, go to my website and search for either kitchen, the word kitchen, or the word invisible. I have videos where I teach people how to enforce invisible lines or stay out of the kitchen. So it's a nice way to use those escalating consequences to help them practice staying out of it. Other rules, not be allowed to be within 7 feet of the kids when they're eating, not being allowed on the tile when we're eating at the table, not being allowed in the L in between the work island and the kitchen countertops when we're cooking food. The rest of the time you can come and go. Also, the humans are going to eat something before they feed the dog. Just 5 bites of something will work. And then we're going to make the dog sit before we let her in or out of the door. Go to the door, tell her to sit 1 time. The more you say it, the less you mean it. So go to the door and tell her to sit once. If she sits, within 3 seconds, fly the door open. So sitting causes the door to open. This is called a premack. There's a scientist that worked with chimpanzees or monkeys of some sort, and his last name was Premack. Premack means one behavior elicits a more desirable behavior later. A lesser behavior will get you more desirable. So if I sit at the door, you're going to open the door and let me out, and I can run around. So that's an example of a Premack. So basically what we want to do is go to the door, tell her to sit. Now, if she's used to listening to herself or telling the humans what to do. So when the humans tell her to sit the first time, she's probably going to be like, are you crazy? You listen to me. I don't listen to you. Well, guess what? She can't open the door. So you tell her to sit, she doesn't sit within 3 seconds, sit at your kitchen table, it's right by the door. And pull out your phone or put a magazine there, read a little bit. Show her you have other things to do and set a 1-minute timer on your phone. After 1 minute, go back to the door, command her 1 time to sit. If she doesn't sit within 3 seconds this time, or walk away and sit down for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Keep doubling the time, make sure you're seated. And as soon as she sits down, fly the door open as fast as you possibly can, and then she gets permission to go out. Now, if you want to teach her to sit and wait for permission at the open door, I also have videos on my website for that. Just search for open door or weighted door, and then there's a video. But teach her how to sit at the door as a rule first, and do that with every door in the house, going in the door, going out the door. These are great ways to help the dog, especially if the door is open and they don't go out. That's a great demonstration of self-control. But after, you just want the dog to learn, if I want to go through the door, I have to sit first. Sitting is more subordinate. They can't race through it. It shows a little bit of control. It shows observance and listening to the human. There's a lot of benefits to that. Okay, so those are just examples of rules, but there are other rules that you can also incorporate. Now, one of the rules, this isn't necessarily a rule, but I showed the guardians how to teach the dog to stay calm on the leash. Remember, don't narrate, and break the activity down to small steps and help the dog practice each step of the process in the easiest version possible. Once they can do all the individual steps, and stay with step 1 over and over until she gets to step 2 and so on. But after she knows all the steps, then you can start making it more and more difficult. All right, I lost my train of thought real quick. All right, so search for the calm leash, because that's kind of a demonstration of how to use that step-by-step process. Okay, and look for that other opportunities, things that she gets excited for. Break it down a small version, easiest version, and break it down as steps, and help her practice and teach her how you want her to behave and perform throughout all of it. Then gradually work her way back up. Eventually, she'll be performing the way that you want her to do. Okay, so we also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is if you want to pet the dog or the dog is telling you to pet it. Leaders tell, followers ask. So if the dog tells me what to do by nudging me and I pet the dog, then yes, the dog told me what to do and I listened and obeyed the dog. That validates the dog, thinks it's in charge, and that is part of the reason why she's doing that right there. So she thinks that she's contributing to the group by being a guard dog. That's her way that she validates and participates. Because the guardians haven't really shown through their actions things that she can do that makes them happy. These two things will do is petting with a purpose and passive training. So petting with a purpose, the dog nudges you instead of validating, yes, you're my boss, tell her to sit. So if I say sit, if she sits, I pet her under her chin and say the word sit, and I pet her as much or as little as I want. Remember, you can pet her anywhere you want except for here. Don't pet her on top of the head. If she doesn't sit within 3 seconds of you saying it the first time, show her I've got other things to do. I wanted to pet you, but if you can't be bothered to sit, I'm going to take a nice drink of water. I'm going to read the paper. I'm going to check my phone. I have other things to do. Playing hard to get works great for dating, works great for dog training too. So after a while, what will happen is she'll recognize, I can't tell you what to do anymore. I have to ask, and better than ask, I have to pay you for the privilege of your attention. And I pay through a currency of obedience. And what will happen is she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. When she does that, make sure you reach over and pet her at least a little bit. Boston Terrier. Pet her at least a little bit, otherwise she'll go back to nudging you. If she doesn't pet, like I said, show her that you got other things going on. Okay, so remember to use the watchword of paycheck. Paycheck, I consider petting a dog. Hey, get down. Come, sit, come, sit. And now the people who she was just barking at are walking by, so I'm distracting her and elongating how long, sit. It takes me to deliver the treat to give those people a chance to walk past, sit, sit. So just like kids, having dogs, a lot of managing dogs is about supervising and distracting them. Okay, so getting back to petting with a purpose, remember to use the watchword of paycheck. Come, we're not ready for that, that's the next section. Paycheck means I suspect you forgot to pet with a purpose. So even if I did it right, if I'm petting Kara and somebody says paycheck because she's standing and they just came out and saw that I'm petting a standing dog, they are assuming that I forgot to pet with a purpose. Even if I did it right, I would stop petting, tell Kara to sit. If she sits, pet her under her chin and say sit, and only the word sit. Remember, they hear the first word that you say. No good girl, just sit. And so pet her under her chin, and then I can actually say, actually, I asked her to sit, and when you opened the sliding glass door, she stood up, and I continued petting her, but thank you, because I do forget to pet without a purpose. So it's not a gotcha, it's a gentle reminder. And even if you want to pet the dog, you should still tell the dog to sit to earn that affection. After a while, the dog goes, like I said, just sit to ask for attention. That's a beautiful thing. Now, what I've been talking about doing later is what I call passive training, which is a form of operant conditioning. I just like using funner, different names that make it a little bit easier to remember. Passive training is waiting for the dog to organically offer you the behavior that you want without any influence. I'll see if I can do it right here. So Kara's walking in this direction. She's basically right underneath the camera right now. I'm not motioning towards her. I want to wait for her to do the thing that I want, and when she does it, within 3 seconds of her doing it, I'm going to pet and reward her, and I'm going to mark the activity. So, come. She was going to walk by, but that's still part of the come. So every time she sits, pet her under her chin and say sit. Every time she lays down, pet her and say crash or chill. Every time she comes to you, pet her and say come. When she drinks her water, say happy hour or Merlot or whatever your favorite drink is. Cara, come. Come. Preemptive. Call away before she gets a chance to bark. That's a great thing to do. So basically, when she takes her first bite of food, call it meatball, lasagna, whatever you want. Come up with funny command words. Most of the time when we give our dogs commands, we're giving them commands because they're doing something we don't want and we're trying to recall. She's barking at the fence. I say, come. Well, she'd rather bark at the fence. That's fun for her. So after a while, she starts, come means the end of fun. Because David says come, and then we go inside and we close the door. I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm just going to ignore David and I practice not listening. So passive training takes all that baggage out of there. You just wait for her to come when you're watching TV. She comes up to you, pet her and say, come. She lays down at your feet, pet her and say, crash. She brings you a toy, name all of your individual toys. And so now you have a vocabulary and you're rewarding her for the things that you want her to do. One of the questions I ask my clients is, what could the dog do to make you happy? Most people struggle, or they give me a list of things they don't want the dog to do because that's the time that they get our attention. Remember, for dogs, good attention and bad attention is pretty much the same thing. So if I come to the human and sit down, they ignore me. If I lay down, they ignore me. I come to them, they ignore me. I drop the ball at their feet, they ignore me. And boy, as soon as I jump at the door, they correct me. As soon as I bark or lunge, they correct me. So I'm going to do the wrong things, or the unwanted human things, or the things that the humans do not want, is a better way to phrase that, to get the human's attention. Passive training will fix that. So it's just the same thing as rewarding your kids every time they do a desirable behavior. So we're celebrating the things the dog does that we like, and that's the watchword I use for this, celebrate. So somebody says, celebrate to me, I turn to look at Cara and I just start petting her. And then I evaluate what she's doing. I start petting first, and then she's standing there, I assume she just came to me. I'm gonna pet her and say, come. If she's sitting, that's pretty obvious, laying down, so on and so forth. Couple mallards, mallard ducks. All right, so the idea is now if I could ask the dog in a month, what could you do to make your humans happy? And she's like, man, they love it when I sit, when I come, when I poop, when I eat my food, when I go to the dog bed, and all the rest of that fun stuff. Now, a couple of housekeeping things. I talked about how to teach the dog to go to the dog bed. Remember the first way we're doing it? You can have the kids help you. Give her a treat, have her throw it on the dog bed. When the dog has one or more paws on the dog bed and licks it up, you say Jamaica, or whatever the word is for dog bed. Also, quick sidebar, come up with a list of the official command words for your house. You know, write all over commands and say, what is the official word for come? Is it come? Is it here? Is it come here? Is it come here? Over here, girl? Dog's name? Whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with any of those. Just be consistent. And then if somebody's saying come here, you're like, vocabulary. Like, oh, thank you, come. It just helps us. Remember, they hear the first word we say, and if we use one-word commands and the same word each time, they can learn a lot faster. Okay, so let me see, where was I going with that? Official command words. Well, I know one of the things I wanted to go over, which is the kids' treats. So kids often are petting their dogs at the wrong times, and they confuse the dog and create some miscommunications. So basically what I would have you do is do that arts and crafts thing. Get a jug, a coffee mug or a glass or something like that, something durable. Get some glue and some sparkle and write the kid's name in cursive or whatever, put the sparkle on top. And then you put them down on the mantle or wherever it is. And you say, hey, one of the things that David, the dog guy, told us is when we pet our dog, that's how we say thank you. We just say thank you before or after I give you this piece of candy. And the kids at your age are going to say, before? You go, are you sure? And they're like, after? That's right. Here you go. Here's a piece of candy. Thanks, Dad. Great. So from now on, instead of petting Cara for no reason, Cara, got awfully quiet. Come. Instead of petting her for no reason, I'm going to ask you, whenever you want to pet Cara, tell her to sit. Cara, sit. Sit. So if I say, the dog knows the command, I say it twice. I tell the dog what to do to sit. If the dog sits, I pet her on the chin, and I say the reason why I'm petting. And so the child just did that. I went and told Cara to sit, and she sat, and I petted her. Then mom and dad would take an M&M or a Reese's Pieces or whatever it is and goes to that child's jar and drop it in there. So now, every time that I do something good for the dog and I tell mom and dad, I get rewarded for that. Kids like candy. All of a sudden, the kids, instead of doing all the wrong things, are going to start doing all. I made her sit here. I made her sit at the door. I made her wait for her food. All the rest of the stuff. After a while, the dog gets practiced at listening to the child, looks at the child as more of an authority figure, practices the behaviors that we want. It's a beautiful thing. So all it takes is a little bit of creativity and some candy. And remember, if the child's doing something wrong and not listening, you say, oh, I have to take away an M&M for that. If it's really egregious, you lose all your M&Ms if you do that. If you stomp on her with your feet, you're going to lose all your M&Ms. Oh, okay, then I won't do that. So it gives you the nice ability to add a little positive reinforcement through the merits of candy. Now, I forgot what the other thing is that I was going to go over, and it will come back to me as soon as I finish this video. You should never say you can't remember, because that tells your brain it's okay to stop looking. Always say I can't remember, but it'll come back to me. And as soon as I finish this video, it'll probably come right back to me. Now, if you have any questions, please don't wait. If I don't hear from you, I assume that everything's going great. So if you do have questions, text me. I don't care if it's months after we work together. If I don't hear from you, I assume everything's going great. So call or text me if you have little questions or problems. The hugging thing, Cara likes to kind of hug, and I'm not sure if it's a dominance thing or what she's doing. So if you do see her doing that, try to pull out your camera, keep it sideways orientation like this, be about 10 feet away, film it a little bit, and see, and then text it to me, and I can take a look at it and see if it's something that we might want to work on or not. Now, I'd like you to really focus on this stuff for a month, and after a month, if the dog is still performing and still doing this sort of stuff, let me know, and we can set up a 1 hour follow-up session to fine tune it. But what I'm thinking you're going to see is you're going to start seeing a lot of little improvements. And so don't be afraid to recognize those, because a lot of times it's very exasperating when we have a dog that has behavior we don't like. We get frustrated, we miss the little steps, or we take them for granted. Little steps are a big thing. When I was doing the video above, there were 3 times we had people come over right from the fence calling her, and this is after practice for like minutes. Those are big steps, and the more that we practice, the better at they'll get. All right, let's see if I can get little Cara right here to come. Cara, come! You're supposed to look at the camera. Well, at least get a profile for you. Sit. All right, we'll see if we can get you up a little bit higher. Come here, Cara. Come on. Come on. There we go. Come on. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Well, this good-looking Pibble mix, she's a Terrier mix, is Cara, and this is Cara's roadmap to success. Remember, everything that you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.